Hi, everyone. My name is Laybell. I love to travel, but I suck at geography. How are you guys doing? We're just hanging, waiting for Destiny 2, classically. This is actually really surprising to me because I feel like last season, when it all came out, I gave it the extra time, and it didn't need this long, right? Am I wrong? Hi, Axel. The live login race. I promise I have it up in the back, right? To see whether or not we're gonna get it. You still didn't get your large bright dust gift? What large bright dust? You logged in and you got in fast? Last time. Yeah, but 30 minutes compared to how long it's been 3 hours since when we were supposed to get it already. May you join for D2, Lily, please? Sure, since you're saying please. And now I'm very curious as to how it's gonna turn out like this, and I apologize, I'm going back and forth. I have a secret for you guys that I'm just gonna tell you guys because you guys are the ones here, right? We have a song release this week, and it's not a cover, it's a song release, original songs, right? And I'm really excited about it. But that means that this is the first one that's gonna be on Spotify too, right? It's gonna be on Spotify and it's gonna be released on Spotify. So I'm trying to make some, I'm trying to work with the producers to get it on Spotify and work with making sure that things are, anonymous and stuff. Lily can't resist a beg. Yeah, I love when you guys beg. I really can't. When you do all the seasonal challenges, you get the large price. Oh, yeah, I remember. Hopefully this season, I'll be able to actually do it. I think only one season I was able to get it. Whoa. Okay. Wow. Wow. We're really just in queue. For real. We should do a timer. You did good with the lyrics. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, so I wrote the lyrics and the main melody of it. I just want to be let into the game so I can fish. I love that fishing is the main thing of a game. If your game has fishing, top tier game. Done. Maybe some FNAF lore while we wait. That doesn't sound too bad, especially since yeah, I don't know. I just don't want to start FNAF lore and then that's right when the game starts coming in. You know what I mean? Okay, sorry. So are we doing FNAF lore tomorrow then? Yeah. I was planning to have today not doing FNAF lore and doing FNAF lore tomorrow. But honestly, I don't know. I was supposed to do something with my brother later also. I was supposed to do something later with my brother also, but my brother has to study for finals. So I actually might do some FNAF lore today. Yeah, I do have another collab today. I have another collab in fucking 2 hours. There's a lot going on today, okay? Okay, so we have a collab in 2 hours. All right. And so hopefully we can get in through Destiny quick enough. And then after our collab, we have a couple of hours and we have our Valorant training Arc collab tonight. I'm curious though. I'm fucking curious. Because now I'm like, shit, how long is Destiny gonna be like this? We might have to start. We might make a dent in our FNAF stuff if it's gonna be like this for a while, you know? Latour Food 200 is now boarding. Welcome to Label Air. Hope you have a safe and enjoyable flight. Who's the coach for today? So the coach for today is actually Gucci. Woo! Which obviously means tonight you could probably also come in, hun. Yeah, if it's like this, to just do it tomorrow and FNAF now so you get stuff done. Dude, Destiny 2 new season tomorrow. You know what? We'll just start with some FNAF while we're waiting for Destiny 2. How about that? I feel like Destiny 2 first season today is like perfect. Okay, alrighty. Let's get into it. Let's get some stuff done. We're gonna do, because Destiny 2 is still taking a while, FNAF while waiting for Destiny 2 new season. We will wait again. No, FNAF lore. Sorry. I need to make sure that that's FNAF lore. People are gonna come in here and be mad at me. Cole Braxty is now boarding. Welcome to Label Air. Hope you have a safe and enjoyable flight. Hold on. Okay, there it is. I'm sorry. This is how I want to do it, okay? Just leave me be. Everybody say thank you, Axel, for doing the playlist for us. Time for my brain to melt again. Here we are with some more FNAF. It's the lore. We are on Game Theory FNAF The Grave Robber, Five Nights at Freddy's. It's like number 30, I think. Number 30 out of 57. Okay? So while we wait for Destiny 2, here is more FNAF.
Game series.
Book series.
Help wanted.
New book series.
Oh, come on. Fine. Phone guy.
Phone dude.
Purple guy.
Orange dude.
Didn't you just... fine. Wild card. Change the category. Timeline.
Bite of 87.
Chomp of 83.
Party of 85.
Wait, but...
Time traveling ball pit.
You can't just...
Reverse.
Oh, yeah? Reverse.
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 Reverse. Reverse. Reverse.
Tell me they got Scott's actual voice, because that would have been so sick. I mean, obviously they didn't. Probably. But it would have been really fucking funny. Would have been really good.
Game Theory. Another day, another installment in the
Damn
FNAF
it.
multimedia
It would have been good, though.
conglomerate. So at this point, some people in the FNAF community really hate my guts. Like, ring me through a meat grinder and feed me to a rabid dog animatronic levels of
Wait, is that true? MatPat ended up getting hated through FNAF also?
hate. Like, for instance, this comment, and I'll read it exactly as written to stay true to his authorial intent. Quote, as a hard-care FNAF fan, he's a embracement to FNAF tourists. He insists on using the box to proof his stupid theories, and they don't even make sense. He sooks and thinks he's smart, but he's not. I wish he would stoop. He then goes...
Dude, that actually really it sounds like the way that Gino Samuel reads anything from Christian Ever.
On to rant for a paragraph about how unrealistic time travel is in a franchise about robot rabbits haunted by ghost metal, but I think you get the point. And though I use this one really over-the-top extreme comment as an example, seeing stuff like this is a bummer, cause I don't know if you can tell, but I really do like this franchise, and I see my role in it as a person just connecting ideas or presenting new threads to consider in a franchise that at this point is massive and really, really confusing.
What it is I think that the way that Matt talks about it sometimes feels too, like, definitive. Even though at the end he says, remember, it's just a theory, a game theory, and all that stuff. I think the way that he makes it sound definitive pretty often, and that's why probably they're so upset all the time, you know?
But his comment does bring up something that I should probably address at the top of this episode since it'll be relevant for today. My use of the, how did he put it? The box to proof my theories. Here's the thing, friends. I think this is something that
I feel bad. I feel like he's genuinely, I feel like he's genuinely kind of sad, bro. I call him, you know, I call him out on cop-out theories and stuff like that, but I don't think, these are all his theories, and, like, I don't like or enjoy all of them, but it's just, like, I don't know, interesting. And now I'm feeling kind of bad that he actually is like, yeah, you guys are sending me a lot of hate comments. Please chill out.
both sides could use as a reminder, both my FNAF theory followers and my FNAF theory haters. There is a difference between canonicity and continuity, and I think a lot of the times in these sorts of discussions, they get confused with each other. Something being listed as canon just means that it's official. It is blessed by the person who is overseeing the rules of the universe. It is self-consistent within the boundaries of that fictional world. On the other hand, a continuity, at least as I'm referring to it here, is a timeline of events, a continuous story thread where one event leads to the next that leads to the next. Take Star Wars as an example. Rey having magic healing powers in Rise of Skywalker, or Leia flying around like Mary Poppins in The Last Jedi. Because they're appearing in official works of the franchise, those powers thereby get the green light as being canonical powers of the Force in the overall Star Wars universe. The problems people have with them, though, is that they don't fit in cleanly with the continuity that was previously established. If Force healing is in fact a thing, then why hasn't it been used to save literally anyone before this point in the series? Tell you what, it would have been really handy for old Qui-Gon Jinn over there in episode 1, but the fact remains, healing
really imagine, okay, the Map Hat picture of this with these googly eyes as the tattoo, if you guys got that subathon thing.
Jin over there in episode 1, but
you guys got the big gold wheel spin.
Healing is now a canonical Force power, which means that the canonicity of certain powers is presenting challenges to the established continuity of events that came before. Now,
That's definitely true.
You see, you can have multiple continuities all existing under the same canon, and it appears as though this is how the FNAF franchise is working. The original novels and the original games exist in an alternate universe from one another. They are separate continuities, and yet they are all deemed canon. This was all expressly stated by Scott years ago. Quote, so yes, the book is canon, just—
Wait, this is actually a really good way to explain continuities versus canonicities. This is a very easy way to have explained that shit for me.
As the games are. That doesn't mean that they are intended to fit together like two puzzle pieces. The book is a reimagining of the Five Nights at Freddy's story, and if you go into it with that mindset, I think you'll really enjoy it. End quote. Now, what I've been trying to do with my theories, and what I think some people on both sides misunderstand, is that I'm not trying to use the books to solve a continuity. I'm trying to use the books to establish a canon that will then allow us to solve a continuity. The books present us with themes,
Sometimes, though, it really feels the other way, you know? Sometimes it really does feel different from that. Like, I know what you're saying, but sometimes it just feels that way.
Concepts, characters, and motivations in one continuity that can then inform our understanding of a separate continuity. Or, at the very least, give us questions that we can ask of that continuity. Charlie, being a robot in the books, tells us that in the canon of the Five Nights world, passable humanoid robots can actually be a thing. So, are there any characters in the games who this may or may not apply to? I don't know.
No,
but
right,
it's
that's pretty fair.
That we owe it to ourselves to ask because it's been established to be canon within this franchise. Do we know what these little pins are on Baby's design here in the game? No, no idea. In fact, most people probably didn't even remember that they existed in the first place. But in the books, they play an important role. These are the things that allow Baby to transform into a human disguise. Now, is that necessarily what they're doing in the game? No, definitely not. Is the best and likely only clue for what they really are coming from a separate continuity? Yeah, in this case, yes it is.
I feel like if he spoke about this a little bit ago, he would, like, this is the best way for him to have done the PR for it, honestly. This is pretty good. This is a pretty good way to do it, and this is a pretty good way, like, I'm understanding a lot of things right now. And I'm like, okay, all right, Matt, I give you some things of what you're trying to do then, you know?
This isn't us trying to shove puzzle pieces together like Scott warned us against. It's about seeing that in one puzzle, there's a piece that fits in a certain location, and in a separate puzzle, you have a similar piece that might end up acting in a similar way. And here's the thing, you don't have to take my word on any of this anymore. Scott recently made a new post about all of this to clarify the situation, in response to the question of whether the
I've enjoyed the memes roasting me about the plot line lately, but it does have a serious underlying concern from many in the community, and I hear you. The question is this: is the lore solvable? Interesting. Good to know that not everybody who was into FNAF was always really happy with the way that it's been taken. You know what I mean? Like, I like when media has healthy question and criticism in a way. You know what I mean? So, like, it's good to know that not everybody was like, everything FNAF shout out is amazing, right? But yeah, I'm just happy to hear that it wasn't like that. And like, people really did sit down and was like, Scott, you're really putting a lot out there. That said, I mean, like, of course, FNAF is still incredibly amazing and, you know, great ARG going on to tell like a crazy amount of stories and all that stuff. But I just mean, like, it is quite interesting. I just like that, you know? I just like hearing that.
lore of FNAF is solvable, he said this.
Hold on.
By the situation, in response to the question of whether
Since that's kind of like asking, is the story complete? In an ongoing story, it's difficult to answer. So let me say this instead. Over the next few years, there are a lot of projects planned, and most are very story-driven. Lots of the later stories will answer some of the biggest questions from the fan base over this past year, in my opinion. Okay.
the lore of FNAF is solvable, he said this. All I can do is say that some questions will be answered, even if it may not always be the answer you wanted. Be patient. Let me at least say this. Future games will look forward, but look to the novels to fill in some of the blanks to the past. So there you have it, from the creator himself. Does including the books in our discussions make things messy and complicated? Sure. But remember what franchise we're talking about here, friends. Messy and complicated is like the formal first name that Five Nights at Freddy's never uses. Call it McFNAF. Messy, complicated Five Nights at Freddy's. The long and short of it is that when it comes to this franchise, we as theorists have always had to be discerning over what clues are helpful and which ones are just red herrings. This is no different now. Back when we only had the games, we did it with the number of Foxy Toes and Freddy buttons.
Yeah,
did a missing button
definitely.
mean it was
I
a new
mean,
animatronic?
if like, honestly, FNAF, you can tell, took so many years. It was only Scott developing throughout it. If it was the cleanest, you know, ARG and story lore game, I would be genuinely surprised. I would be like, man, this guy's probably fucking, you know, a mad genius. I think even I gave too much shit for certain things, you know? For certain things. Like, yes, I will. We have to accept. It's fine, right? It's fine to be like, yeah, this is a retcon. This is my cop-out. Just as long as we assume that it's a cop, like we actually accept it's a cop-out. And I feel like we're at that point where it's like, okay, there was nothing else they could do. They had to do that.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Now we just have to do it with time-traveling ball pits and sound illusion discs. And here's the last thing I'm gonna say on the issue, and hopefully it's the last time that I have to talk about it. At this point, where there's soon to be more books than there are games in this franchise,
God.
take a minute to wrap your head around
I
that.
genuinely feel bad. He's about to spend a whole 10 minutes just saying, please stop hating me so much.
that one. To dismiss the books entirely at this point.
If you're
is
working
just
on it
short-sighted.
alone,
And I'm not just saying that because we're referenced
it
in the
makes
new
sense,
book
you know?
Fetch. Yeah, seriously, we're in it. From page, well, I read it on digital, so it's like page 250.
What do you mean we're in it?
127. Quote, Greg did tune back in though when Kimberly Bergstrom raised her hand. Well, he sort of tuned back in. He heard her question, is this just a theory? She probably didn't actually say it that way. That was just my creative interpretation of that
That's
line.
so
Look, Ma,
funny.
I have an inside joke hidden inside the second installment of a
Okay, honey, listen, Matt, remember when I was giving you the benefit of the doubt, okay? Saying, is this just a theory does not automatically mean that he was thinking about you. Hello?
multi-volume scholastic
You're not the only
book
FNAF
series
theorist out here,
made it.
man.
Anyway, meta discussion over. Let's talk about this new book and what it means for the franchise, shall we? Fazbear Frights #2 Fetch was recently released and it
Me, the minute I see a fucking airplane logo anywhere, oh my god, are they talking about Lily Bell Air?
is,
Shocker.
well, if I'm being honest, it feels much less connected to the series
He's
than
the most
first one.
well-known.
Don't get me wrong, the stories are still really good, if not even
I thought that
darker than the
Dawkins
original
was.
3. I mean, one
Or
has a young girl
Da-
outright
Da-
being mauled
Dono?
to death and wrapped in
Dono?
a sheet while she
Da-
lays there dying,
Jenkins?
so pretty intense stuff. But the connections to the main lore are definitely a bit shakier this time around. I mean, the first book, Into the Pit,
Dawko.
featured
Yeah, I
cameo
thought Dawko
performances
was.
by Golden Bonnie, Baby, Funtime Freddy, The Missing Children's Choir, and more.
Missing
This one, meanwhile,
Children's
introduces us
Choir.
to a lot
That's
of new
awful.
things. A smartphone-powered animatronic dog named Fetch. Tiny, free-roaming versions of Freddy Fazbear called Lonely Freddies. We do get some quality time with Plush Trap, but, you know, it's Plush Trap. It's like the D-stringer in the FNAF canon alongside the Bitty Babs and the Endoskeleton 2. Is that a hot take? Did I just offend the Plush Trap stands? I mean, the runt barely squeaked into Ultimate Custom Night as is. I'm just saying here, guys. Anyway, let's walk through these 3 new horror stories and what they mean for the franchise, shall we? Story number 1, Fetch. Greg and his 2 friends, Hattie, and Cyril live near Olympia, Washington. Greg feels compelled to explore an old abandoned Freddy's restaurant where he discovers Fetch, a fearsome animatronic dog with sharp teeth and an even sharper understanding of texting lingo. Quote, "How long has this place been empty?" Greg asked. "Fetch looks like he's older than my dad, but smartphones haven't been around that long." End quote. After getting scared out of the pizzeria, the dog goes on to fetch whatever Greg wants with increasingly disastrous results, killing a dog,
Oh
ripping
my
his
God.
uncle's finger off, and eventually retrieving his school crush in the worst way possible.
No.
It's actually a pretty simple story, but there are 2 big things to
Ew.
call out about it. First, it continues a theme that we're starting to see develop in these books. Kids are being drawn to these restaurants. It's never explained in the story, but Greg feels compelled to go to Freddy's
It's like when sand users all feel compelled to hang out with each other.
by some unseen force. Quote from the book, "This might be what he'd felt in the field, what had called him here." And again, a bit later in that chapter, Greg was afraid he might not have gotten what he was there for, had he done what he was meant to do. End quote. Greg is now the second character to have some
What?
sort of psychic connection to these restaurants. As I talked about in our last theory, Oswald from Into the Pit had the exact same thing, where he inexplicably found himself drawing horrific animatronic monsters without ever knowing about Freddy's to begin with. It's also worth noting that both are the first stories in their respective books. It'll be interesting to see whether this trend holds in future installments. The second important part of the story, though, is that it clearly establishes Freddy's as a place where technology is advanced far beyond where the rest of society is. As I read in that earlier quote, Fetch can connect to smart devices like cell phones despite being older than the kid's parents. The reason I call this out is that in theory crafting for this franchise, I've seen a lot of theorists use the more modern, sleeker designs of the Funtime animatronics to put them later in timelines.
Right.
But it seems like this story is telling us that those sorts of details don't matter. Freddy's is and will always be fantastically ahead of the curve when it comes to technology, especially technology for kidnapping small children. There was a bit more in that story about random event generators and plants/machines being able to read our minds and summoning stuff to you via mental focus, but I can't quite think of how it's important to any of the actual overarching
Can't believe
narratives for the
William Afton
franchise,
invented
so
USDC.
maybe
That's
it's a
fucking
discussion
funny.
for a mini theory at some point down the line, but for now, I'm just gonna skip it. Story number 2, we'll come back to in a minute, as that one has the most to discuss. Story number 3, out of stock.
Oh,
a new plush trap toy, the
interesting.
Plush Trap
Okay.
Chaser, a light-activated
surprising.
chomping green rabbit, is all the rage, selling out at stores across the nation.
Wait,
It
what?
also stated chomping out of stock. A new plush trap toy, the Plush Trap Chaser, a light-activated chomping green
Oh,
rabbit.
so now Plush Trap actually has something to do with the fucking story. Huh, Matt?
it is all the rage, selling out at stores across the nation. It also retails for $79.99, so Scott be making those fat stacks both IRL and in the book world for his killer merch. A boy named Oscar, fed up with never getting what he wants, shoplifts the last one that someone had supposedly returned for being defective. Quote, is it just me or do the teeth look wrong? Isaac pointed at the straight, slightly yellow, human-looking teeth that were visible through Plushtrap's partly opened mouth. And what's
See, I was gonna be like, bro, maybe they just forgot to wear their retainers, hello? But then when they said it was like straight, but they were human looking, that's completely different.
the eyes? He reached out and poked one of the cloudy green eyes. Ew. He whipped his hand back and flicked his finger. It's squishy.
Imagine the things he could have done if he wasn't a fucking child murderer.
Suddenly activates and terrorizes Oscar and his friends, chomping through the house's doors and garages just trying to bite them. Their only protection is that Plushtrap freezes in the light. Quote again, he was turning the box over and over.
Oh my god, Plushtrap is a Dead by Daylight killer, confirmed. Freezes out in the flashlight.
In his hands, and there in bold letters was a critical detail: walks in the dark, freezes in the light. End quote. A few hours and a comedic number of faulty flashlights later, the boys destroy the monster at last by luring it in front of an oncoming train. A few things to call out here in this story. First and most obviously, it explains—
Is that Fuji-san? I'm just kidding.
Plushtrap's behavior in
Weeping
FNAF 4.
Angel? Ooh,
really
Weeping
Angel.
Man, I haven't heard
goes
that
on a rampage and is stopped by the power of flashlights. So it's cool to make that
one
more
of the
connection
best
with
Doctor
Plushtrap's
Who,
original
like,
minigame. We also know, based on
antagonists,
the story, that Plushtrap
honestly.
apparently
So
has
creepy.
the ability to mimic voices. He has a speaker system built in under his fur and is able to mimic the voices of Oscar's mother and friends. Now, this is a really interesting detail because up until this point, the only voice mimics in the franchise have been the Funtime animals.
Wait, what does he do?
Apparently has the ability to mimic voices. He has a speaker system built in under his fur and is able to mimic the voices of Oscar's mother and friends. Now, this is a really interesting detail because up until this point, the only voice mimics in the franchise have been the Funtime animatronics, with their built-in systems intended to lure children away from their parents so that they could be grabbed. This suggests the possibility that Plushtrap was either a prototype for those larger models, testing out the voice mimicry software, or was himself a Funtime era animatronic.
David Tennant, best Doctor in your opinion? Yeah, I love David Tennant.
Alongside the other nightmares from FNAF 4. But the last and most important thing to call out, though, is the fusion of human parts and animatronic parts. The story makes it—
Wait, I just realized too, Galileo Gallifrey makes so much sense, honestly.
very clear that the Plushtrap
I'm surprised that you watched Doctor Who, did you?
And teeth. Quote from the book. Raj turned to Oscar. You managed to steal us, the only Plushtrap chaser that looks like a half-human hybrid. End quote. Now, this idea of a half-robot, half-human animatronic is a completely new concept for the series.
I watched it with my brother, too.
In FNAF 4, we had ourselves Nightmare, the black, transparent, spooky bear that, if you looked closely enough, had a human brain in its head as a part of its design. A detail that pretty much
so where did Raj come from? Hold on.
From FNAF 4. Point, all us theorists have classified him alongside the other nightmares from FNAF 4. But the door was either a prototype for those larger models, testing out the voice mimicry software, or was himself a Funtime era animatronic. Whereas up until this point, all us theorists have classified him alongside the other nightmares from FNAF 4. But the last and most important thing to call out, though, is the fusion of human parts and animatronic parts. The story makes it very clear that the Plushtrap Oscar runs away with has both human eyes and teeth. Quote from the book. Raj turned to Oscar. You managed to steal us, the only Plushtrap chaser that looks like a half-human hybrid. End quote. Now, this idea of a half-robot, half-human animatronic is a completely new concept for the series. But is it? You see, in FNAF 4, we had ourselves Nightmare, the black, transparent, spooky bear that, if you looked closely enough, had a human brain in its head as a part of its design. A detail that pretty much all of us dismissed. I mean, all of us glossed over Nightmare in general is just like the embodiment
you couldn't
of
actually
death.
see
the
anything.
Game's Grim Reaper as the crying child slowly flatlines in his hospital bed, or, you know, just
look
a
how
figment
dark
of
it
the
is,
boy's
really.
haunted imagination. But with this context from Fazbear Fright, could
You're
Nightmare
in, you're
have
gaming,
actually
congratulations,
been a real
you're
experiment? Was William Afton in his quest for immortality, or Henry in his quest for more lifelike robots, testing the human brain's ability to survive in and operate an animatronic body? This would make Nightmare the literal literal Frankenstein's monster for family entertainment dining.
Now
And
you're gonna
even though I
wait?
say that jokingly, it's also something that appears in the Curse of Dreadbear DLC.
Well, you might not
for
have to
FNAF
wait. If you
Help
want, you
Wanted,
can just
where
go
we
through it.
actively
Just
program
do it
a
again
brain
later.
and insert it into Dreadbear's head before hand unit tells us this.
Oh,
done.
wait, is this the
Insert
Halloween
entertainment
DLC?
This would make Nightmare the literal Frankenstein's monster for family entertainment dining. And even though I say that jokingly, it's also something that appears in the Curse of Dreadbear DLC for FNAF Help Wanted, where we actively program a brain and insert it into Dreadbear's head before hand unit tells us
Oh, it is no
this.
CC, my
Well
bad.
done. It's time to introduce the creature to the kid.
Wait, is this the same Halloween DLC where we had all the masks that were quote unquote like supposedly supposed to tell us that FNAF or like not Five Nights at Freddy's, sorry, Freddy's Pizzeria was really popular back then or before all the other games or whatever. Okay, it's the same one.
Kids for focus testing and troubleshooting.
We know, based on the original trilogy of books, that Afton was obsessed with recreating living metal just like those original haunted animatronics.
Literally
I see
fucked up.
Nightmare, Dreadbear, and this plush trap all as potential experiments looking to do exactly that. Lastly, we come to story
But
number
Dreadbear
2,
actually looks
Lonely
kinda
Freddy's,
cute.
my personal favorite of the bunch. In this one, we have rebellious teen Alec looking to expose his goody two-shoes sister Hazel for the fraud that she really is. Alec, in this story, is actually a really tragic character. He's a teen who acts out because he's ignored by his parents. And the main reason he's trying to bring down his sister is because she is always the one who gets the attention.
Is this Phineas and Ferb?
The two of them inexplicably team up to torment their parents in the lead up to Hazel's birthday party at Freddy Fazbear's, with Alec planning on double-crossing her the day of the party. When the day arrives, Alec's plan backfires. It's revealed that Hazel is truly just that pure and good of a person. It's been Alec who's been the jerk, pushing everyone around him away,
Oh,
thinking himself as the
no!
victim when he was
Yeah, sounds
actually
about right.
making himself into the victim. With the
Sorry, but this is real. This is actually true. People fucking do this shit all the time. I genuinely, you know, it's just check yourself before you wreck yourselves, you guys.
parents just trying to cater to his needs, and Hazel just wanting a brother who liked her. Alec runs off, ashamed of his actions, and hides in the storage closet. Just
And
as
then he
starts to make
dies!
a promise to change for the better, he meets with a short little
Oh,
lonely Freddy,
no.
free-roaming 2-foot doll made to entertain kids that are ignored or forgotten about at parties. But things are never quite what they seem in Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The
Oh,
cute
no.
little bear hypnotizes Alec and then body swaps with him, imprisoning Alec's consciousness inside the tiny bear body. Quote from that moment, there, sitting across the table from his sister and his parents, was Alec. It was the same rumpled t-shirt he'd thrown on that morning before the party, the same ripped jeans, the same unruly golden curls, his light green eyes. "Hey," Alec said, the voice in his head quiet at first, but quickly it was screaming, "Hey, that's not me! That's not me!" His eyes, his stolen green eyes and his stolen body gleamed at Alec. And then, the fake Alec smiled. As Alec, trapped in the lonely Freddy, was carried away by a store employee, he saw fake
No!
Alec wink at him from the table before returning his attention to a smiling, happy family. Dark, right? And Alec is
It seems dark, but at the same time, I think I've heard darker kid stories, honestly. It feels like, I mean, it's probably going to get darker at this point, right? But I feel like this is just one of those, like, you didn't know how to appreciate your family, so I'll appreciate them for you.
isn't alone. After he's puked on by one of the kids at the party, he's picked up and thrown into the dumpster, where he meets a couple new friends. One final quote. His fall was broken by dozens of plush bears that looked exactly like him. Dozens of discarded lonely Freddys. "Help!" Alec thought he heard himself say. Pretty soon, it was every bear in the bin, their thin, muted screams for help swallowed by the metal and darkness that entombed them. Alec and his new friends, dozens of the lonely ones.
Honestly, this is like a compelling one. Genuinely, this feels the most realistic of all of them. And I can imagine telling this story, like having someone tell this story to me as a kid. Like you know how like sick children's horror stories, like La Llorona and stuff like that as a kid. Like this is it. This is how you teach like appreciation. I don't know. This seems a little bit more. This seems the most. That's what I'm saying, Axel. This is the most realistic of all of them. Really. Come on. What am I gonna think about here? Freaking ball pit time machine.
What a great closing
Welcome back,
line for that
Spectre.
story. It is so heartbreaking to see this misguided kid suddenly learn to love his family, only to have his chance at redemption ripped away by these animatronics. It is so
Too little,
so
too
sad
late,
as a
Alec.
story.
My
But
God.
here's the thing. For as sad as it is, this story carries over yet another recurring theme that we're seeing develop.
I wonder how bad it would be if I actually tried to use this story to teach my kids. Is that bad? I feel like that's a bad thing.
In these books, that animatronics are stealing the identities of kids.
True,
In the first
true.
book, we had the story To Be Beautiful, where Baby steals the looks and identity of a girl named Eleanor. Here, we have ourselves another robot AI, this one housed inside the Lonely Freddy module, stealing the body of Alec. This, to me, is right in alignment with what we've been expecting from Vanny in the new FNAF game that's slated for release later this year. Remember, in FNAF VR, we hear the story of Jeremy, and how he cuts off his own face in an attempt to reject the system taking control of his brain.
Talk about
And
scaring
when
them
we
for
beat that
life.
game-
I feel like you guys have definitely heard scarier fucking stories in your childhood. Okay? This is not the first scary story you heard from your childhood.
It ends with Glitch Trap basically locking us away and taking over our body. We let him escape through us. But
People read Goosebumps to kids, for God's sake, okay?
what we thought was happening on a small scale, one person getting taken over in one game,
You've heard
instead appears to
scarier
be happening
fucked
to
up
kids in
stories from
pizzerias
your childhood?
everywhere. It's further
My
evidence
bro.
supporting this theory that I did on FNAF
Why?
VR, where the story from this point forward is basically Afton creating an army, a cult, a bunch of brainwashed, or more accurately, body-swapped people hiding in public, hiding in plain sight, taking over bodies one by one. Kinda makes you wonder what FNAF 2020's got up its sleeve, right? But before we look forward, we actually
You mean
have to look back.
2021?
You see, there's one last topic I'd like to explore with this final story, but it's a doozy. It's the parallels that this story
I watched Are You Afraid of the
has
Dark and
with
turned out
FNAF
fine.
4.
Exactly,
In fact,
see?
I believe that the Lonely
I
Freddy
don't- I
story
think
is
this
helping
is-
us to
I think this
solve
is the
what is
old,
one of the
really okay
longest-standing
stories
mysteries
to,
in this franchise, and
read to a
also
kid.
one of the strangest inclusions that we've never really had a solid answer for to begin with. And that, my friends, is the true story of Psychic Friend Fredbear.
Ooh,
He's here, he's there,
he's
he's
everywhere. Who you gotta call? Psychic Friend Fredbear.
But in order to tell
Ooh,
you why,
that's
we
my
need a
best
bit
one.
more
That's
time.
pretty good.
So until then, my friends, there's only one last thing to say. Do you want to save money on pizza? Yeah, that's right. All this Freddy Fazbear talk has gotten me hungry for a nice old slice of pizza. Luckily, restaurants and food delivery are considered to be essential businesses right now, which means that you can still get yourself a steam and slice delivered right to your door by a service
Okay.
like Papa John's without breaking quarantine rules. But even better, you can save money on that slice thanks to our sponsor for today's episode, Honey, a free browser.
Ah, okay. I was trying to figure out who it is. So I was like, how they know that I was hungry? Whoa. There's a really loud sound overhead this house right now. Hold on. It's like not a normal sound. It sounds like just, that's weird. It sounds like if an airplane was just literally right on top of you. I'm gonna be right back. Okay, that was really weird. I walked outside and my roomie said that like they looked outside and they didn't see anything, but everybody's looking. Like another guy like in the front of the house on a bike that was passing by on a bike was also looking. We have no idea what it is, dude. That's crazy. That said, unfortunately, I think right now Destiny 2 is just not going to work out, and I only have maybe about an hour and a half until our collab. So if you want, you can go ahead and just play first. I'm going to close up Destiny 2 and just reopen it later after my collab. Yeah, we're just going to continue with FNAF for now. Thank you. Which is fine. I'm still having a great time. But that was scary. That was fucking weird, dude. It's probably just like a low flying like a low flying aircraft or something, but it just seems odd, right? Because this is a whole residential area.
He's your buddy when your brother is a jerk. He's your pal when your dad is off at work. He won't leave you.
Yeah, no, this is like a super residential, like civilian area.
Until the sixth night. He's here, he's there, he's everywhere. Who you gonna call?
Psychic friend Fredbear. Yeah!
He's a flower for reasons still unknown, and he stalks you. On your way back home, he makes a promise that throws off all the lore. Seriously, Scott, what is this line for? And is it supposed to be in a slightly different yellow font here? Are you meaning this to be figurative or literal? Because if it's literal, you are opening up a literal can of worms. He's here, he's
oh
there,
my god, he's literally like, come on, Scott. Respond to me.
Fredbear.
Psychic friend Fredbear. He's there, he's everywhere. Who you gotta call? Psychic friend Fredbear. Fuck! Ooh! Fire! Fire!
Hello, internet!
Okay, that intro was fire. That's my, like, third best intro so far.
Welcome to Game Theory, where I start off today with a disclaimer. Warning! In entering this video, and honestly all of my theories, you are entering a zone of speculation, where any idea is valid for consideration in the hopes that it solves more problems than it creates, answers more questions than it raises, or ties together dangling pieces of evidence in a narratively satisfying way. Am I trying to solve the lore? Yes. Am I doing it by asking really extreme, over-the-top questions, looking into very specific details way too closely, and more often than not drawing connections between concepts that probably aren't connected at all? Absolutely yes. Side effects of entering the theory zone may include a blown mind, total and utter confusion, a deeper appreciation of your favorite franchises, fun stories to share with friends, a head full of random factoids that will at no point aid you in life, and disillusionment about human existence in our own place in the
Desensitization to
universe.
child
Enter at your
murder.
risk. Disclaimers aside, theory crafting
Very,
is a
very
tricky
self-aware.
needle to thread. A good theory is one that has enough evidence to support it, but not so much evidence that it's basically a known fact. It requires extrapolation, thinking beyond just the stuff that we're given, but not so far past that you're overreaching or making baseless claims. And all of that while still maintaining a satisfying story. A story that stays true to the franchise that you're talking about while not being afraid to take that known story in new, often riskier directions. In a lot of ways, theory crafting is like writing fan fiction, just, you know, with more evidence. And, less aggressive cuddling? A lot less aggressive cuddling than some of the fan fictions I've been exposed to over the years. Anyway, the reason that I say all of this right now is that today's theory is... how do I put it? It's one of the stretchier ones. Like, there are some theories that are rock solid. There's some really strong evidence in the game, and it's supported by stuff that's been said by the developers or creators. Then there are others that require a bit more creative license, where the connections are there, but they might require you to squint a little bit, or just, you know, have fun with it and go along for the ride. And this episode is one of those theories, because today we're once again diving into the world of Fetch, Book 2 of the Fazbear Fright series. You see, last time I mentioned this, Fetch was recently released, and it is, well, if I'm being honest, it feels much less connected to the series than the first one. The connections to the main lore are definitely a bit shakier.
Watch him literally say, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm wrong. I was wrong. Because honestly, okay, you know?
This This one, meanwhile, introduces us to a lot of new things. A smartphone-powered animatronic dog named Fetch, tiny free-roaming versions of Freddy Fazbear called Lonely Freddy's. And that felt weird to me. Every story of the first book felt very connected to established characters, from Golden Bunny suits to shape-shifting baby to Funtime Freddy. So why was this one, the second book, doing so many new things? It felt like a pretty extreme tonal shift, especially considering Scott had just posted about how these books would fill in some of the blanks from the past. So then I thought about it, and I considered what blanks from the past this odd collection of stories might be trying to fill, and something clicked. I think that there's a chance that one of the new inclusions in this book is actually something that we've known about for a long time. An oddball character that's confused us and stymied our theories for years. I believe that there's a chance that Fetch's Lonely Freddy's may actually be the real identity of FNAF 4's psychic friend Fredbear. You remember that plush doll from FNAF 4 with the living eyes that tracked your movements as you walked around the room, that stalked you in the streets and disguised itself as a flower? The thing that could actually read the crying child's innermost thoughts. I think that guy was a type of Lonely Freddy doll. But to truly understand why I think these two are connected, let's begin with Lonely Freddy's story. To quickly—
No, I mean, that's pretty realistic. I don't think you have to explain the entire thing.
recap this story in a bit more detail than I did last time, because now the details actually matter for the theory. Alec is an angry teenager who's upset that his younger sister Hazel gets all of their parents' love and affection because she's practically perfect in every way. So when Hazel, just out of the blue, starts being overly nice to Alec and wants to join him in making their parents miserable, he doesn't trust her. He suspects that she's up to something, and so he concocts a plan to expose her for being a spoiled brat at her upcoming birthday party, which happens at, wouldn't you know it, the local Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. His plan, well, it's not a particularly good one, and if I have to fault this story for one thing, it's that the mechanics of how it all works is kind of confusing, so stay with me here. At Freddy's, they have this big money booth. You know, those clear boxes with fans that blow all these tickets around you, and you try to grab them, and you walk away with whatever you're able to capture in the booth. And in the booth, there's a special ticket that allows you to win the top prize in the restaurant. A Yarg Foxy. Basically a large Foxy doll with extra hook-swinging action. Okay, so it seems like
might as well write a book about his theories.
Foxy, so Alex
honestly, he doesn't need to write a book on his theories. He might not sell as much, especially if he's doing all these videos. Like, I think this is good.
Chances by
also, I don't read, so
taking out the special winning ticket before she gets in. Except she does win. By some weird, magical, unexplained miracle, the ticket winds up in her
unexplained miracle. Haters will call it manifestation, or truthers will call it manifestation, something like that.
Hair, and she wins the Foxy doll. The twist, though, is that she didn't want to win it for herself. She wanted to win it for Alec. You see, Alex
literally
loves
so
Freddy's
sweet.
Pizzeria, but he never gets to have his birthday there. And of all the characters, he loves Foxy the most. Even
honestly, hold on. Does Chuck E. Cheese still do birthdays? Hold on. Can you guys imagine? Oh fuck! I'm not even home for my birthday. But wouldn't that be so fun?
pretending to be Yarg Foxy around the house when no one's looking. But when Hazel tries to give it to him as a sign of friendship, as a way to try and finally make him happy, all it does is infuriate him. Once more bested by his perfect sister, Alec loses it, he rips the Foxy doll and runs off to the storage room crying. Once there, he meets a lonely Freddy doll, a small, free-roaming version of everyone's favorite bear. The bear hypnotizes him and then body swaps with him, leaving Alec's consciousness trapped forever in the doll's body, while an AI with his face roams free, unbeknownst to his family. So forgive me the detailed plot description, but I needed to get all that in because Alec's story, strangely enough, closely matches what we see happening in FNAF 4's Crying Child. Now, I don't think Alec is the Crying Child by any means. There are just way too many differences here, but I did want to call out how similar these two stories are because the parallels seem intentional. They seem to be inviting us to compare these two stories. So let's do exactly that. Just like in FNAF 4, there's a countdown to a birthday party happening at Freddy's at the end of the week. Though in this case, it's a sister's party and not his. Speaking of the sister, Alec's younger sister Hazel is described as being cute and perfect, with a lot of emphasis being placed on her green eyes and her curly yellow hair. An important physical description considering Elizabeth, the girl who would go on to possess Baby and who we assume is Crying Child's sister and owner of this room.
Honestly, hold on. I'm trying to think. What does Matthew Afton look? No. What's his name? Michael Afton look like? Because they don't look related. You know what I mean?
FNAF 4 is also
You think Taco
blonde
Bell does
with
birthday
green
parties?
eyes. In fact,
I know
is
Taco
brought
Bell
up
does weddings.
a lot. An unusual amount.
You want a
throughout
Chuck
the
E.
Lonely
Cheese party
Freddy
next
story.
month?
Quotes like this.
I can't,
Alec
I'm not
had never noticed the
home.
bear's eyes before. Had they always been that blue? And again, its eyes were as blue and deep as an ocean trench. Over 13
They do
times
fiestas,
are
do they?
eyes in this story qualified by their color, which is worth noting considering that a lot of the other short stories thus far in Fazbear
Wait, who has blue eyes? That's kind of interesting, yeah.
frights
Wait,
have
what?
had
A Taco Bell wedding? Are you marrying our toilets or something? I love Taco Bell. My toilet has no problem with it. But yeah, Taco Bell has weddings. I'm trying to look at the price for a Chuck E. Cheese wedding. I remember wanting a Chuck E. Cheese wedding, or I'm sorry, not a wedding, birthday. Fuck. I remember wanting a Chuck E. Cheese birthday growing up. So I'm like, shit. Now I just realized I'm an adult who can actually have a Chuck E. Cheese birthday, and my mom can't say no to me.
themselves pretty sparse character descriptions, but this one, for some reason, really chooses to emphasize the fact that Alec and Hazel have green eyes and that Lonely Freddy has blue eyes, which, if you have an obsessive level of knowledge of the series, should ring a few alarm bells. In Sister Location, eye color was a huge deal, so much so that I did a whole theory about it back when Sister Location came out, where the baby animatronic had blue eyes until she scooped Elizabeth and her eyes turned green. And here we have something very similar happening.
There we
Quote
go.
From the story, Alex stared hard into the blue eyes of Lonely Freddy, eyes that had burned through his soul, and he searched for answers of his own, but he only came away with more questions, because the blue eyes of the bear had
Wait, okay, I don't know if this is still here, but it says Taco Bell spices up entertaining with new Party by Taco Bell. I think Party by Taco Bell lets you seamlessly reserve time and place for up to 10 guests via TacoBellParty.com. And then what do you get? I'm sorry. I'm like, now I want to party. Oh, it doesn't. Oh, it's not there anymore. Sad.
suddenly
It's not there
turned a light
anymore.
green, end quote. And again, in this quote, all Alec could see was the bear as its newly green eyes bore through him. So we've got a party, a sister, and some eyes. But obviously there's gotta be more, right?
Chuck E.
Alec, when his
Cheese
plan
funeral?
fails, runs off to hide in the storage
I
room
would,
crying,
honestly.
similar to the crying child being locked in the storage room in FNAF 4. And in general, Alec is just a sulky, moody kid
Me try the new Lily Bell art to get Chuck E. Cheese being my pastor while I get married to. That's so funny.
who, similar to our crying child, both loves and hates Freddy Fazbear's. Alec, in the book, secretly loves the restaurant and its characters, but he also hates it because he only gets to go when it's for his sister, which makes him bitter and angry to be there. It's a lot like the conflicted feelings our crying child has for the restaurants, who clearly likes the franchise. I mean, he has all the toys in his room, and yet while he's there, he's clearly miserable. We're not exactly sure why, but he does have mixed feelings about this franchise. Kind of like me, that is hashtag relatable. I feel seen, crying child. To me, one of the most telling connections between this story
I mean, sorta, but at the same time, come on, we know you love it.
and the game is the Yarg Foxy toy. When Hazel tries to give the toy to Alec, Alec freaks out and rips the toy's arm off. It's a small detail, but one that immediately made me think of the Foxy that's in the crying child's FNAF 4 room. A Foxy plush with one very specific feature. A feature that has never gotten explained. Its head was pulled off. So we have ourselves two Foxy plushies, both with a body part ripped off in some way, in the possession of a kid who both loves and hates Freddy's, that winds up locked in a storage room crying, attends a birthday party, and has themselves a green-eyed sister with blonde hair. It is just an oddly specific series of parallels that are almost so precise, they're inviting us to compare them. It's actually a bit uncanny. Alec in this story is almost like a fusion of the crying child and his brother. You see, crying child for all the reasons that we just talked about, but also the older brother because, well, he's a mean older brother to his sister, and his favorite character is Foxy, so much so that he pretends to be Foxy around the house, just like we see the older brother doing to torment
He just pretends, like, instead of even for tormenting, he just pretends to be Foxy around the house.
And the crying child in FNAF 4.
That's,
Again,
like,
it's
sus,
not exactly
you know?
the same. There are plenty
Well,
of
not sus.
differences
That's
between
not
these
sus.
two scenarios, but there are a lot of parallel details.
that says a lot
almost
about
like
him.
alternate universe versions of roughly the same series of events. So what does any of this have to do with Psychic Friend Fredbear? Well, I believe that all of these parallels with FNAF 4 are intentional. They're drawing lines between the two stories, inviting us to compare them. And when you do that, it becomes undeniable that Psychic Friend Fredbear is a Lonely Freddy. To understand why, let's start with
absolutely.
the book. This is how Lonely Freddy is first described. Quote, "It was a weird name for a toy, but the weirdest parts of it were harder to define. The bear stood stiff, almost at attention. Its eyes stared straight ahead at the stage, but Alec had the strangest feeling that it was still watching him." End quote. So, a small Freddy toy with eyes that watch you as you move around the room. Definitely sounds like what Psychic Friend does as we maneuver our way through the FNAF 4 minigames. His white eyes just move around with us, wherever we go.
This was the most suspicious thing, honestly. When we first got to see this, like, seeing this, I was like, yeah, that shit ain't normal. No way.
We're also told that the Lonely Freddy is able to free roam in order to follow the kids around. Again, explaining why he shows up in practically every screen of the FNAF 4 minigames. It is literally designed to be a moving surveillance camera. I mean, maybe it can't disguise itself as a flower or whatever, but just chalk that one up to Scott's artistic license. Later in the story, we're told what the purpose of the Lonely Freddy is. Quote again, "At Freddy Fazbear's, we believe that no child should have to experience the wonder and delight of Freddy Fazbear's Family Pizzeria alone. Using patented technology and a touch of that Freddy Fazbear magic, Freddy will learn all about your child's favorite things just like a true friend." Aunt Gigi leaned close to their mom. "Is it just me, or does Lonely Freddy sound like the cure for the unwanted kid? It's a mechanical last resort, as in no one wants to play with this kid, so here's a machine that'll do it instead." End quote. This is a device specifically designed to become a friend to sad and lonely children.
Wait, did he say that this was because this is inside of the place though, right? It's not like you could just buy it. It wasn't in the stores, right?
Have to experience the wonder and delight of Freddy Fazbear's Family Pizzeria alone. Using patented technology and a
Yeah, interesting though. Like,
to play with this kid, so friend to sad and lonely children. Children just like FNAF 4's crying child. Children just like Alec. And in a line, again drawing parallels between the two stories, we get ourselves this. Quote, "If there was ever a kid who would have been foisted onto a Lonely Freddy at a birthday party, it would have been Alec." Now, this is important. One of the strangest things about Psychic Friend Fredbear in the game was his knowledge of crying child's innermost thoughts. Saying things like, "Remember what you saw."
He's just like
and
me for
he hates
real.
you. It's the whole reason I started calling him Psychic Friend Fredbear in the first place. The toy's knowledge of what was going on inside the boy's head was just uncanny. Just one of the many strange things about this character.
This bitch looking at me.
One of the many strange things about this character that gets an explanation via Lonely Freddy's behavior in the story. The bear approaches Alec in the storage room and starts asking questions. Questions that start to turn serious. Quote from the book, "I've been waiting for you, friend," the bear said. "We should be best friends." "It's a stuffed animal," Alec told himself. "It's a stuffed toy." "What's your favorite color?" "My favorite color is green." "What's your favorite food?" "Lasagna." Then the bear's questions took a different turn. "What would you do if you were asked to hurt someone you love?" It felt like the bear was
Okay, that's weird. That's weird as fuck, bro.
reaching its soft, plush paw into his very soul and extracting the answers he kept the most hidden. And it was doing it so effortlessly. So the Lonely Freddy is a stuffed bear designed to act as a surveillance camera on kids. Follow them around, talk to the sad, lonely ones, and then extract information from them to become their friend before eventually body swapping with them. I mean,
the biggest marination play ever. This is like the lonely weird kid at the school, but that lonely weird kid has no other power. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't know how to say it.
Each and every one of those details, minus the whole body swap thing, is something that we see the psychic friend Fredbear do. But there is one last detail that I haven't included yet. The Freddies are controlled by a man who works in a private backroom office. Quote again, the party prepper turned a dial on her hip-clipped walkie-talkie and pressed her finger to her headset. Someone get Daryl to do a Lonely Freddy demo.
Oh,
The fact
damn.
that there's someone behind the scenes controlling these devices in the book is a direct callback to the secret private room from Sister Location. The one where there were surveillance cameras watching the FNAF 4 house, guarded by the password 1983. It was in that room that we saw a psychic friend Fredbear for the first and only time in a non-8-bit setting. There, on the desk, was a short little plushie with his white little surveillance eyes and a walkie-talkie right next to him, coinciding with this.
Well, you said that wasn't a walkie-talkie, but a security camera remote before.
Scene from the book. So there you have it, friends. The official.
But I mean, now my thing out here is that's probably just a remote control for the Fredbears, maybe. Unless I guess they don't walk, so never mind.
Name of psychic friend Fredbear is Lonely Freddy. It's not quite as fun, but I guess it's easier for me to type, so that's a plus.
Just do the
it's a camera system
psychic
controlled
friend
by someone
Fredbear.
hidden in a back surveillance room. A system that has the ability to walk and talk and maybe even hypnotize and body swap. Now the question that we're left with is who was controlling it in FNAF 4?
My question is, what do they want? What do we switch these bodies for?
I mean, it seems like the obvious answer here should be William Afton, right? Who else would be doing it? But the bigger question is why? Why would he be doing all this just to watch what we assume is his own son? And then over in Bookland, the question is whether all of this is intentional. It seems like the employees don't actually know the true nature of these robots. So is this an AI roaming around? Or was a normal Lonely Freddy swapped out for one with body snatching abilities? That one seems like the most likely scenario, considering in story number 3, out of stock, the plush trap chaser is swapped with an evil one with human body parts. So maybe William Afton or some of his people in this book universe are slowly seeding out evil animatronics into the world to run as little test cases. Also, since I'm wrapping up my discussion of Fetch here, something else for you to chew on. At Hazel's birthday party, there's a girl named Charlotte. A girl who shares a name with the child that we know goes on to possess the puppet. A girl who, in this story, is allergic to chocolate and accidentally eats some and then spends the rest of the party vomiting. Could this actually give us an explanation for why Charlotte in the games would end up outside of the party, outside of the restaurant, when we see her in FNAF 6, before she eventually gets killed and turned into a puppet? It may be. It's just a thought that I'm throwing out there into the universe for everyone to pick apart. But with Fetch out of the way, it's time to look ahead.
That actually is interesting. I don't think I ever questioned why Charlotte wasn't in the birthday party. It's pretty good.
Because based on the descriptions, it's books number 4 and 5 coming out later this year that seem like they may hold the biggest lore reveals yet. In book 4's description, we see that one of the main characters will have the name Susie. If she also has herself a dog, Susie is almost guaranteed to be confirmed as our Fruity Maze girl, and our first ever victim, the one who goes on to possess Chica. We also know that one of the book 4 stories will be about Pete and his younger brother who, quote, get in a fight in the wake of their parents' divorce and fall prey to a gruesome curse. Two brothers with divorced parents that have some blood curse on their family? Seems like it could be another stand-in for our crying child and Foxy bro getting wrapped up in the cycle of serial killing their father started decades prior. And then, flipping over to book number 5's description, quote, in room 1280 of Heracles Hospital, something evil is keeping a man alive. A man with gruesome burns all over his body and an iron will to live. Sounds.
Imagine like reading these books. Imagine going to Barnes and Nobles and like reading these books and going, yeah, I want to take them home. They're pretty like creepy books. It's interesting. And like not having any idea that this was a game. You know what I mean? Just imagine like, oh, and then you're like reading all these books and then you're like telling your friends, hey, have you heard of this? And then you look it up finally. Okay. And you're like, wait a minute. Why is there a game out here?
A lot like our good old buddy William, or it could be the aftermath of the FNAF 6's restaurant burning. With that being the last book in the Fazbear Fright series, I'd expect that one to tie up a lot of different loose ends. Speaking of loose ends, by the way, I hate them. That is why this show exists, to get rid of narrative loose ends, to tie them up, put them neatly and organized back on the shelf. So you know what I really
don't know if
appreciate?
it's neatly
what
and
doesn't
organized,
have loose
buddy.
ends? Wireless earbuds. No wires mean
Let me come.
He stopped doing the it's a theory, a game theory, and he makes us watch the sponsor now.
Home with you. Is there room for one more? Can I come home with you? Let me come home with you. Can I bring me home for one more? Bring me home. There's room for one more.
Bro, these intros get better and better. Who is he hiring to do the animation, bro?
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Book Theory. Because if you have one moderately popular indie Smash game in your franchise, chances are you also have yourself a 10-installment book deal. That's barely an exaggeration. Bendy and the Ink Machine, 3, with more promised on the way. Hello Neighbor, 6. Heck, it's a surprise that
Wait, stop. That's real? Are these also ARGs or something? Why do they have so many books? Why do they have books with it?
Baldi's Basics doesn't have an entire trilogy dedicated to the horrific backstory of the jump rope girl.
That makes me sad.
No joke, at this
Wait,
of
do
the
they?
is that Baldi's Basics, with more promised on the way. Hello Neighbor, 6. Heck, it's a surprise that Baldi's Basics
Oh, it's
doesn't
a
have an entire
surprise.
trilogy
Okay. I was like,
dedicated
do
to
they
the horrific
really?
backstory of the jump rope girl.
That is so interesting.
No joke, at this point in my life,
Sweet, sweet,
I'm
sweet.
reading more video
True.
games than I'm playing. But of course, today we're not talking about any of those other franchises. We're talking about the Grandpappy, the one that paved the way for all those who would dare to follow in its footsteps. Five Nights at Freddy's and its 8 books, as well as its 2 graphic novel reimaginings of the first 2 books. But here's the best part here, friends. True to this franchise, the books were supposed to end at Fazbear Frights number 5. We're currently at Fazbear Frights number 3. The end was in sight. That was gonna be it. That was the end of the line. Mystery over.
But guess what?
Oh no, my friends. Of course not. Now, there are 2 more final installments announced.
I really
Just
don't
like
know. Like, I know it says money, right? But honestly, I'm not convinced that all these books make money. I'm convinced that what the book can create, like these other theories and videos, makes money for them or whatever. But no, I don't think that your average FNAF enjoyer is sitting here going, I need to buy the book. It just doesn't seem that way to me. Maybe it's because I don't read, so.
Every game
I don't
after
think they
FNAF
sell well,
3.
yeah.
I used to joke that the fan was the scariest part of this
Yeah,
franchise.
the
oh
fan.
no, not anymore, dear theorists. Now it's multi-platform merchandising. So Fazbear Frights number 3, titled 1:35 a.m., just came out, and whoo boy, there is a lot to talk about with this one. If you'll remember, Scott has made it pretty darn clear that this new book series is meant to help us solve the mysteries from the past, and that the stories are, as they say in every book's official description, pulled from all different corners of the FNAF
Not nearly
lore.
as well as
But unlike
games,
the
but still
past
better
two
if they
Fazbear
were
Frights
just books
where the
alone.
connections have been a
I
bit,
can believe that, but I'm saying, like, is it that much money in comparison to a lot of other things you could be doing? Like, I don't think it's that much money in comparison to just releasing another fucking game at this point. Yeah, maybe it is more collector's. I don't know, though. I don't. And again, maybe it's my bias against it or whatever because I don't read.
Sir, I suppose, is the best way to describe a time-traveling ball pit that leads to a scene of some 1985 pizzeria murders. The stories contained in this one, in 1:35 a.m., all feel very strongly connected to, well, like I just said,
He's done
every
everything
corner
already?
of the
A
FNAF
TV
canon.
show.
The stories here are
TV
starting to show.
TV shows are actually less expensive and a lot easier to go through. Not than a book, but like than a movie, you know? So I'm surprised, like, there wasn't, like, and I'm sure everybody would have just hopped on that shit. Who does American Horror Story? Like, I bet that fucking, you know, I bet whatever channel is that does American Horror Story, FX or something like that. Like, I bet they would just hop on that fucking Five Nights at Freddy at, like, dick a while back.
how they're connected to not only each other, but also how they're connected to the original book trilogy, and yes, how they're even connected to the games, creating this elaborate web of complicated animatronic
Technically, he's
death.
done
But
one.
more
He's
than
done a
anything else,
FNAF
these
TV
books
series.
are starting to confirm things for us. Theories and suspicions that we've had for the better part of the last 5 years, which, you know, is kind of nice to receive some level of validation. Like I said, it is a lot.
I mean, he's already done a graphic novel. It's only you know what? Yeah, fair. I would. In Security Breach, he made a TV series. In Security Breach.
To cover, and so I'm going to cover this one like I've covered the last 2 books. Today's episode is going to be dedicated to a general overview of the stories, spotlighting some of the most important details for theory crafting, and explaining what I think this new batch of stories is trying to tell us about the series' mysteries. And then the next video, we're going to be doing a deep dive into probably the biggest mystery of all 3 books so far, FNAF's newest killer animatronic, the Stitch Wraith. This guy is actually really...
Like, in between all this, he's coming out with a shit ton of books. I'm like, you know how fast TV works nowadays? You know what I mean? Like, why come out with all these other books when you just come out with small like, American Horror Story-esque anthology stuff?
Interesting, and his story
I don't
is
know
starting
if
to weave
American
through
Horror Story is
most
supposed to
of the
feature
9
backrooms.
other
I
small
do
stories
not
that we've
keep up
covered
with
in these
American
other
Horror
books,
Story. I don't
and
watch
what
them.
he means might actually have some severe implications for not just the original trilogy
Is this in the book? Is this specific picture in the book?
of novels, but also the future of the games. Like I said, more on that next week, but for today, let's start with our title story, 1:35 a.m. This one is pretty straightforward. Delilah is a young woman with a tragic
cheaper?
backstory.
He wouldn't
Her
have to pay
parents
for
both
anything.
died when she was 11, at which
Oh, it's
point
not?
she was
Okay.
bounced
Yeah, no,
around
he wouldn't,
and
as-
abused, sadly.
He really wouldn't have to pay for anything. Like, people would love to buy the license just to do the TV show. I simply cannot imagine the idea that nobody wanted to buy that. Especially during all this time when they were, like, coming out with American Horror Story was at its fucking peak. And, like, Black Mirror was out there. You know what I mean? Like, he's been writing for, like, eight book series now. Or whatever.
This
8
one
books
is
already.
Pretty straightforward. Delilah is a young woman with a tragic backstory. Her parents both died when she was 11, at which point she was bounced around and abused, sadly, in the foster care system for years.
God.
Eventually, she finds a
Foster
stable
care.
home and happiness.
No one
with a
wants
man
to mess
named
up with
Richard.
FNAF,
They get
and yet
married,
they
Delilah
had a movie
excitedly looks
contract
forward to finally
for a
having
while,
child
so
of
it's
her own
like-
so she can
I
finally
don't know.
complete the family that she
I
never
wouldn't
had.
understand that.
Everything is going great in her life until Richard divorces her. Now she's alone and sadder than ever. And then she dies, trapped in a ventilation shaft after being tortured by the embodiment of the child that she never had.
Oh my
Children's
God,
entertainment
what?
Finally care system for years. Eventually, she finds a stable home and happiness with a man named Richard. They get married, and Delilah excitedly looks forward to finally having a child of her own so she can finally complete the family that she never had. Everything is going great in her life until Richard divorces her. Now she's alone and sadder than ever. And then she dies, trapped in a ventilation shaft after being tortured by the embodiment of the child that she never had. Children's entertainment, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so I may have skipped a few steps there, but it's roughly the idea. One day, Delilah finds an animatronic doll named Ella at a garage sale. A doll that
Okay.
reminds her of the child that she
Always
dreamed
with the
of having.
animatronic
Quote,
dolls.
With brown curly hair, big dark eyes, and plump pink cheeks, the doll looked almost exactly like the baby Delilah had envisioned having someday with Richard. She'd been sure that she was going to be a mother, so sure that she'd named the baby before the baby was even conceived.
Hold on. This, like, idea where you can see, I bet that animatronic has one of those little, like, discs in there that uses sound waves to affect what you're seeing. Whatever the hell they called it.
Her name would be Emma. Delilah reached for the tag that hung on the doll's wrist. My name is Ella. Ella. So close to Emma. Delilah felt an odd tingle slither through her body, end quote. She buys the doll, in part because it reminds her of her almost never child, and because it has a built-in alarm clock. Emotionally scarring with a side of functionality. Just the way I
Yay,
like
built-in
it.
alarm
Anyway, she
clock!
sets the alarm inside of Ella for 1:35 p.m. to help wake her up for her shift at work. But the alarm doesn't go off. And just like that, Delilah gets her first taste of parental disappointment. So she does what any good parent would do
She
in that
throws it
situation.
away!
Immediately hurls her would-be child into the nearest
Bye!
dumpster. Yikes, Delilah. Maybe it's better
It's not an actual baby, Matt, okay? It's not even doing the function, the one function it's supposed to be doing, which is an alarm clock.
that you and Richard didn't have that kid after all. Anyway, that night she's
Yeah,
awoken at
illusion disc. Thank you,
1:35 a.m. by Ella. Delilah assumes that she accidentally set the alarm for a.m. rather than p.m., which reminds me of the time I didn't bother to set the clock right on my Tamagotchi and was forced to scoop his poop every day at 4 in the morning. I can't imagine why he died. Certainly not my fault. Anyway, she tries to find the trashed Ella doll, but can't. And from that point forward is slowly driven insane by the doll waking her up every morning at 1:35. I mean, you know, 1:35 is still...
Wait, that's crazy. How is it still terrorizing her, especially since it could probably, like, it's probably already thrown away elsewhere?
Early enough at night to get a decent night's sleep. It's not a 3 a.m. challenge or anything like that, but whatever. Yeah, knowing that she'll never...
What is the Isaac Newton 3 a.m. challenge?
Every morning at 1:35. I mean, you know, 1:35 is still early enough at night to get a decent night's sleep. It's not a 3 a.m.
I call Isaac Newton at 3 a.m. What is this fucking video?
Challenge or anything like that, but whatever. Yeah,
I'd try it. What is it?
She climbs into a ventilation shaft in a building under construction and dies. Quote from the book: "She never wanted things, she wanted love." Oof, it is a heartbreaker, man. The stories in these books so far have been pretty sad, but this one is just tragic. In fact, all 3 stories from this particular book are just rough. Now, this story has 2 really important details in it. Details that seem to make Delilah's horrific struggle a strange nexus point for both the original book canon as well as the games. So let's start with the books first. In 1:35 a.m., the Ella doll is described as a, quote, helper doll manufactured by Fazbear Entertainment. Continuing forward with that quote, the booklet had a list of...
Is this what the Ella doll looks like from the books?
What Ella was designed for. She could keep time and serve as an alarm clock, manage appointments, keep track of lists, take photos, read stories, sing songs, and even
she could do a lot, actually,
serve
technically.
Drinks. Delilah shook her head. Now, in the games, we never really get to learn much about Henry, the creator of the animatronics. But in the novel trilogy, Silver Eyes, Twisted Ones, and Fourth Closet, we get to meet not only his daughter Charlie, but also some of his other creations, including, wouldn't you know it, a doll named Ella, who is built to serve tea.
Really?
From the Silver Eyes novel, quote, out sailed Ella on her track, a child-sized doll bearing a teacup and saucer in her tiny hands.
They
like
really brought this shit back from the old one.
Across all 3 novels, we never get a solid physical description of the Ella doll. But in another book, The Freddy Files, which collects all the main information about the franchise, we do get to see our first illustration of
Ella
doll.
from the first... Oh, Ella from the first book. Well, I don't know. I didn't read any of the books, so I didn't know. He never mentioned Ella was in the first book.
1980s era bright blue full-skirted dress with pink ruffled trim and a big
bow around
the waist.
That's definitely the same one.
Doll, meaning that this first story is happening in the novel timeline after the events of Fourth Closet. Somehow, this is the doll that Henry created for his daughter Charlie, who, I need to technically remind you, is his daughter, because again, remember, his daughter died at a young age, and he replaced her with a series of 4 robots that represent Charlie growing up at various ages. So Ella technically is an early version of his own daughter. Figured I'd throw that little factoid in there since, you know, this is a real and totally valid plot point from the novelized series of events in this very easy to understand series.
He has to fucking say some shit like that. That's so good.
The way Delilah decides to hide in the ventilation shaft felt really strange to me. Like, why? It was super random, but also...
Don't you guys hide in ventilation in some of the games? Didn't you guys hide in ventilation in, like, FNAF 2 or something?
Was one of those things that felt so oddly specific that it felt like it had to have had a bigger purpose. So I dug around
that's what I figured.
And found this for you. For your consideration, I present to you Night 2 of Sister Location.
So, funny story. A dead body was found in this vent once. Okay, so not that funny, but it's a story.
So, shit!
Could Delilah be that body that was actually found in the vents of Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rentals? Maybe, but probably more likely it's alluding to that story from Sister Location rather than directly the same one. You see, in the book, we're told that Delilah's vent is in a site that's under construction, a 3-story structure that feels a bit like an office building. Sister Location, meanwhile, takes place in an underground facility underneath a residential home, so it's probably not the same building. At the same time,
it's just kind of like an Easter egg thing, I I feel like,
drawn to this
right?
place. Quote, the answer to her plight was in here. She was sure of it. Someplace here, she was gonna find a way to escape Ella forever. End quote. Time and again throughout all of these Fazbear Fright stories, we're shown people being drawn to the Freddy Fazbear locations through some supernatural force. So could Delilah, or whoever died in the Vents of Sister location, have been compelled to come there? And this story is just giving us a hint as to how that happened. Maybe. And whereas the Delilah Sister location connection might just be me reading too far into things, that certainly isn't
I
true
mean,
for our
that's not
second
the
story.
that's not the
Room for
first
One
time you've
More.
done
In
that,
this
bro.
story,
It's
and
fine.
stop me if any of this sounds familiar. Stanley is a night guard at a mysterious underground facility full of little ballerina dolls looking to escape to the surface.
Oh my God.
Ding, ding, ding! It's like in one sentence we just won FNAF bingo. Each night he falls asleep on the job, wakes up to find a mini Rena doll on the desk asking to go home with him. Stanley falls asleep again, and when he wakes up, the doll is magically gone. Over the next few days, his arms start to swell, his throat starts to bleed, and yet he keeps going to work, keeps finding dolls, and keeps falling asleep. Eventually, he learns that the dolls have been crawling into his mouth while he sleeps, causing his body to
That reminds me of how, like, people said spiders crawl into your mouth when you sleep.
swell to the point of bursting. The end. The moral of this story, kiddos, be a good employee. Don't sleep on the job. Otherwise, little
Now, Stanley, I must say you're playing FNAF a bit too much.
animatronic creatures are gonna crawl into you and make you explode from the inside out. What's also interesting about this story is Stanley's dreams. Each time he sleeps while on duty, he has himself a strange dream. In the first, Funtime Foxy is a cab driver. In the second, the facility's power cuts off and he comes face to face with Funtime Freddy. And in the last one, Ennard is a dentist and Ballora is his dental assistant, which I would say is
Wait, these actually just sound like regular ass funny dreams.
one of the strangest things to ever appear in this franchise, but then again, I turn your attention to this corner where we have time-traveling ball pit, anime Foxy, Yandere Chica. Anyway, this one is pretty obvious, right? Stanley is working at Circus Babies Entertainment and Rentals, that underground facility from Sister Location, and the dolls crawling into his mouth are a parallel to Ennard using Michael's progressively decaying body as a skin suit in that game's secret ending. I think this story might be trying to give us a more realistic interpretation of those events, or something that more closely matches what we see happening in those ending cutscenes. That instead of Michael being scooped and having his skeleton removed and all of that at the same time, that our protagonist Michael instead is being slowly filled up with animatronic pieces night after night.
Then what's with the scoop? I mean, they obviously make it a thing to scoop them.
Giving him that progressively sickly look that scares all the people around him. Stanley's story even mentions this, quote, he staggered and stumbled down the sidewalk. Passers-by stared, some seeming worried, others just annoyed, like an inconvenient walk.
Wait, where?
Night after night, giving him that progressively sickly look that scares all the people around him. Stanley's story even mentions this, quote, he staggered and stumbled down the sidewalk.
That looks exactly, that sounds like exactly the same as the
Some seeming worried,
description
others just
after
annoyed,
what
like it
happened with Mike
inconvenienced them
happened.
to see another person suffering, which feels right on point with how those cutscenes were depicted in Sister Location. But okay, of the 3 stories in 1:35 a.m., it's story number 3, New Kid, that's the most exciting to talk about, at least for today's episode, because this one gets to the heart of what is still to this day the single biggest question of the series.
What's
and
in the
that
box?
is the identity of Golden Freddy.
Damn it!
Let me tell you, I thought we had this one pretty well nailed down, that it was Cassidy, aka the vengeful spirit from Ultimate Custom Night, and yet this story
AKA, pretty sure Scott's son's picture just, you know, uprooted, very funny.
well, it causes me to question a few things about our conclusions. First, let's go through a quick summary. Devin is a 9th grade social loner alongside his only friend Mick. One day, a new kid in school named Kelsey shows interest in spending time with the two of them. Kelsey is good looking, he's charismatic, he immediately attracts the attention of all the cool kids in school. And even though Kelsey, Devin, and Mick all get along as friends, eventually Devin gets jealous of Kelsey because Kelsey has everything that Devin wants. And so to get some revenge, he lures him to an abandoned Freddy's restaurant long forgotten at the outskirts of the town. His plan is to trap
Hey, yo, Nordic! Hello, hello! Thank you so much for taking your folks on tour. Hello, Nordic. Hello, tourists. My name is Lily Bell. I love to travel, but I suck at geography. Did you get to play? Did it work out? Did you get to play? Because I ended up giving up on it. It took too long. He won't let me reveal my 3 sizes, right? How was it, Nordic? Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. Hello, tourists. Once again, my name is Lily Bell, or I played Dead by Daylight with Nordic a little bit earlier. It is currently Funathon Day 15 for me. We're going through some FNAF lore while waiting for our upcoming collab. It's, you know, all the rules are in the middle bottom. There's 8 out of 120 minutes until our next spin on the wheel. But please, enjoy yourselves. Have fun. Yeah. Don't let your man control you. Don't let your man control you. You do what you want to do, my love. Yeah, enjoy yourself. We're doing FNAF lore, and it's really mainly about the books right now. It is MatPat, okay? So we're going through it. I'm waiting. I'm really looking forward to seeing what's gonna happen for when the new game comes out, which I think is called Security Breach at that point, right?
Kelsey in a springlock suit for a few hours to scare him, but, well, you know what's gonna happen. The sheer mention of springlock suit immediately gives you a spoiler alert as to what's gonna go down. Kelsey puts on the Golden Freddy suit.
The books are interesting in their own way, but, you know, I don't know. It's very like, okay, I can pick and choose small things around this. You know what I mean?
Gets skewered alive. Quote. The blood-saturated gold suit for everything that Devin wants. And so to get some revenge, he lures him to an abandoned Freddy's restaurant long forgotten at the outskirts of the town. His plan is to trap Kelsey in a springlock suit for a few hours to scare him, but, well, you know what's gonna happen. The sheer mention of springlock suit immediately gives you a spoiler.
This is not even the only thing, too. The whole, like, oh, I'm gonna put you in the springlock suit just to scare you definitely reminds me of Crying Child, actually.
Spoiler alert as to what's gonna go down. Kelsey puts on the Golden Freddy suit and gets skewered alive. Quote. The blood saturated the bear's matted fur in seconds and began pooling
Literally
on the floor.
disgusting.
Devin stared at the moving blood. It looked like it was a living thing. A thinking red liquid lake stretching out. End quote. Mick and Devin leave Kelsey for dead for fear of Devin getting in trouble, but they're not quite sure he actually died. Nearly a week later, Devin is convinced to go back and check on Kelsey, but when he does, he's in for a surprise.
He's not there!
Kelsey has vanished. Devin eventually sticks his hand inside the suit's mouth to feel around for
and then he eats the hand!
Kelsey's slumped over dead body, only for the spring locks to fail again and crush his arm.
Yeah!
As Devin lies on the floor, trapped and slowly bleeding to death, he gets a final glimpse into the suit and, well, let's just say what he sees inside rocks the foundation of what we know about this franchise.
Glam rock?
Quote, Devin wiggled in one more attempt to free himself. The mouth opened even more, and Devin got a sudden glimpse inside the suit. He gasped. Down low, past his arm, Devin could see a body, a dead body, just like he thought he'd find when he came back here to check. But it wasn't exactly like he thought he'd find. This one had curly black hair. The body in the suit wasn't Kelsey.
What?
Now, there's a lot of weird things about this story that I don't quite have answers for, but I do have some thoughts about.
Hi there,
First and
sweetie.
foremost
Hello.
the ending. You see, the book doesn't end with Devin's death like you would expect. It actually continues to a final scene with Kelsey, alive and well, as the new kid at school introducing himself to two boys. It seems, at a first reading, like this should be a flashback to when Kelsey first meets.
What? Bro. Body swap?
Mick and Devin at school, like, oh, this was the fateful meeting that would eventually lead to multiple of their deaths. But it's not. This is Kelsey at a new school meeting two new boys. In the story, Mick meets Kelsey first and then brings Kelsey over to meet Devin, and it all takes place.
Is this really just Scott being mad at the Chads? Like, the good, quote-unquote, good-looking Chads in school? They're like, you know what? I think you need to die.
In a classroom. This closing scene, meanwhile, is outside the front doors of a school, and the two boys Kelsey introduced himself to are less social outcasts like Mick and Devin, and more like bullies. We're expressly told that the boys are snickering at the passing kids. Even Kelsey's first line to them is different. It implies that Kelsey has somehow lived on after his supposed Springtrap death in Golden Freddy, and now he's the new kid at yet another new school.
This feels really like body swap, but at the same time, I don't know whose body is inside of the fucking suit.
Introducing himself to two new kids. And the way that this final scene is written, with Kelsey scoping out the two boys from afar before he approaches them, it feels like he's actively targeting loner kids to make friends with. Could this be Kelsey's attempt to befriend kids that most overlook and then lure them back to a Freddy's Pizzeria for some tragic incident to happen? It seems like it would be a stretch, but let's talk about Kelsey himself. Mr. Perfect. Kelsey is a weird entity in all this. Throughout the story, there are moments when his behavior is specifically called out as slightly off. Quote from the book, Kelsey tilted his head and studied Devin for a couple of seconds. For those 2 seconds, Devin had the weird feeling he was being evaluated. And again later, Devin was tempted to stab Kelsey to see if he was a robot.
Oh my God.
Kids don't say stuff like that. Once they're actually at the pizzeria, things go surprisingly smoothly for
This is what I'm saying, bro. This is what I'm saying. The body swap is there, bro.
Devin's plan. The line in the book even goes like this, quote, this was going even better than he imagined. He thought he was gonna have to talk Kelsey into trying on the Golden Freddy suit, but it looked like he was gonna do it all on his own.
Joke's on you. It was a trap.
It was like it was meant to be.
A
All of
trap!
it seems to cast some level of suspicion on Kelsey's true motivations, and that's without me even mentioning
Devin,
the
you
fact that his body
dumbass.
just goes missing at the end of the book when it has been skewered and bled to death. To me, it feels like Kelsey may just be our vengeful spirit from Ultimate Custom Night. In the story, Kelsey is this
Wait, but he sees the the pool of blood though, right? He was like, oh, it seems like the pool of blood. It almost like it was alive.
described as having wavy blonde hair and blue eyes. Now, we have a pretty solid idea that its hair is straight, with a slight wave, and it appears to be blonde. But here's the kicker. This image was created by inverting colors. It's what gives it that blown out and kind of creepy appearance.
Well, don't even worry about it. You kind of have to remember also, like, Scott said it himself, right? He just uses pictures of everyone, but it doesn't necessarily, like, Scott used a picture of himself as the software developer, but it's not supposed to represent Scott. It's just a placeholder. It doesn't make, right?
Appearance. If you invert the colors of the vengeful spirit's eyes, you get blue, just like Kelsey is described in the book. And it would fit the idea of a vengeful spirit, a kid who is angry about his own death, perhaps in an accident like we see in FNAF 4, or in this particular story, looking to get revenge on other kids who are similar to his original killers. He goes from school to school, presumably ones near Fazbear locations, to somehow trick kids into getting killed by the suit.
I guess, yeah, it
The
makes
parallels
sense,
with
Axel.
vengeful spirit even go to the moments right around Kelsey's death in the book. This is how it's described, and the sound wasn't the bad part. It was bad, yes, but the bad part, the really, really bad part, was the way the suit started jerking in a spastic, horrific dance. It looked like the moth-eaten, mildew-blotched gold bear was convulsing, but it wasn't the bear, it was Kelsey. It's remarkably similar to the final
It was wink, wink, Kelsey. It was Kelsey.
cutscene from Ultimate Custom Night, where we see again an angry Golden Freddy, presumably filled with the vengeful spirit, twitching
Right.
off into the darkness.
Oh my God. And it's going out, right? Specifically looking for like bullies or whatever. What?
Also worth noting is that the Springlock suits are apparently big enough for kids to slump down into the body. Devin, when he initially can't find Kelsey's body inside the suit, decides to dig deeper down into it. Quote, had Kelsey somehow slid down into the suit? Was that his hair that Devin could see? This, to me, confirms what we see in FNAF 4's storage room cutscene. The strange tuft of hair that's coming out of the body of the suit. Back then, we weren't sure what this was trying to tell us, what that
It just
tuft
looked
of
like
hair
fur.
was meant to be. But now, I think we can safely conclude that it is indeed a child stuffed into that body, and that we're only seeing the top tuft of hair poking out. It would seem to imply that there was a victim before the bite of 1983, and that the crying child was somehow aware of at least one, if not multiple, of past victims shoved inside the suits. But all of this brings us to the obvious question of this story, the curly black hair at the bottom of the suit. Who's that? And honestly, I'm not sure. Cassidy, which is what we've been assuming to be Golden Freddy's name this entire time, does indeed have black hair, but it's always been described as long and straight. In the fourth closet, we physically
Okay, but at the same time, I could definitely believe this long and straight hair, just, you know, in its blood, all right, all crumpled up and everything.
see Cassidy, and she's described as this, quote, that's Cassidy, a girl with long black hair approached. And in the survival logbook, where we first learned of Cassidy's name, there's this girl who, again, has long, black, straight hair. And that's something worth pointing out.
You try being slumped inside of a Freddy suit for your entire grave, okay? God.
For as chaotic as the story in this franchise has been for all its iterations, names and hairstyles and colors of the victims seem to be fairly consistent. Susie is always associated with her dog. She has blonde hair with curls and blue eyes. Cassidy always appears to have straight black hair. Fritz always has freckles. The names and the faces of the surrounding characters
I
may
didn't know that
change,
Fritz
but the
always had
missing
freckles.
children all seem to be fairly consistent in both name and physical description, which is an important detail to keep track of moving forward. So could all of this mean that Vengeful Spirit and Cassidy are two separate entities? That two spirits might both be in possession of Golden Freddy, or that Cassidy isn't really associated with Golden Freddy at all, and is instead the identity of one of the other animatronics? Because in Fourth Closet, she technically wasn't the one who was associated with Golden Freddy. Honestly, I don't know. I need to actually review the evidence for this one, and I encourage you to do the same. The last thing worth mentioning for all of us to chew on is the mysterious slithering that's heard throughout this story. While the boys are exploring the abandoned pizzeria, they hear something inexplicable in the walls. Quote, while they were in the bathroom, Devin was pretty sure he heard something slithering
The building is alive! The building is alive!
through the walls. He didn't say anything. From the way the other boys' faces paled, he knew they heard it too. They didn't mention it either. It's never mentioned again. Nothing ever comes of this strange little detail, but it's clearly important because more inexplicable, strange sounds come from the Freddy torso after Kelsey dies. In a later quote, "Did you leave anything else?" He tried to ignore the fact that the scuttling sound was coming from the bear suit. Now, this is after Kelsey has already stopped squirming and twitching. So again, we're left with some mysterious force moving around in the pizzeria creating these sorts of sounds. Is it Ennard? Is it the Stitch Wraith? Is it something else? Like I said, lots to chew on with this particular book, but as you can tell, it's given us pretty explicit information about some of the biggest questions that this series has had. Now it's up to us, as always, to put all those pieces together. And there certainly are a lot of pieces that'll start coming together next time as we
Honestly, where did they get this?
From the way
That's
the other
pretty,
boys' faces
like,
paled,
oh,
he knew
never mind.
something.
I know how to
What
do
about
that.
chew on questions that
Like,
this
the editing
series
is
has
so
had.
good
Now it's
here,
up to
bro.
us, as always, to put all those pieces together. And there certainly are a lot of pieces that'll start coming together next time as we start looking into the power of agony and the twisted timeline of FNAF's next newest murderer, the Stitch Wraith. So make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified of when that video comes out next week.
Why do you guys dislike agony? What is with that? Isn't that just like a theme? It's not like a person. As far as I know. Oh, midichlorians 2.0. Oh no. I don't have my cop out alarm.
Alive. It's a Hello, Internet. Welcome to Game Theory, where today we're covering
Where's
the
my
scariest
cop-out
topic in all
alarm?
of FNAF lore, the timeline. But not for the games. Oh, geez, no, I hate myself, but not that much. Whew, I'll probably have to do that at some point down the line, but not today.
Wait, what?
Timeline. But not for the games.
Okay, that's
you
why
see,
that makes
there's a
sense.
new monster afoot in the FNAF universe. A killer that has horrifically taken the lives of nearly a dozen people. A killer as yet unseen in the games, but one who will, after today's theory, provide us with key insights into how this whole FNAF universe works. The true nature of Remnant, and how ghosts can possess endoskeletons. As I said, he hasn't been in a game
Remnant
yet. I have a
who?
feeling he'll be showing up soon. Maybe as soon as the new game security
Remnant, straight up, again, midichlorians.
breach. But in order to know for sure, it's our job to track his movements, to understand what his goals are, and where he's headed to next. You see, last FNAF theory, we did a surface level analysis of 1:35 AM, the latest installment of the Fazbear Fright series. And boy, was
Aren't
that
they
one
all
a biggie,
surface
with
level,
huge
bro?
revelations about sister location, ultimate custom nights,
Oh,
vengeful
sorry,
spirit,
never mind.
and the
1:35
real
AM is the
identity,
book.
or should I say identities, of Golden Freddy. And looking back, since the Fazbear Frights books became a thing, I've done done 5 theories on them, covering the many, many connections that they have to the various facets of FNAF lore. From new strings of murders happening in 1985 to the true identity of psychic friend Fredbear. But despite all of this new FNAF talk, there's been one element I've largely been glossing over: the Stitch Wraith. In the event that you haven't picked up any of the installments of the book series yet, let me catch you up. Each new book contains 3 short stories, right? That's the selling feature. It's what's advertised on the back of the box, so to speak. But each one also comes with a bit of a bonus. In reality, each book is more like 3 1/5 stories. You see, each one ends with an epilogue, our little MCU post-credits teaser, giving us a piece of yet another story. The tale of the Stitch Wraith, a story that appears to be spanning out across the ending of each and every book in this new series. And that alone would be pretty darn cool, right? Also, it's a brilliant marketing tactic to keep us buying more just to see the end of this thing. Slow clap, Scott Cawthon. Slow clap. But 3 segments in, and it's becoming clear that the tale of the Stitch
I still think a TV show would have been fucking wild. And I feel like a TV show would be able to explain and show all these. Like, it has the range to do it, right? Obviously, a movie, it has so many limits, but TV show, I don't know, dude.
Wraith isn't just another horror tale. It's instead a running thread throughout nearly every other shorter story that we've been reading through, which in turn seems to connect it both to the original trilogy of books as well as even the games. So in order to understand what this thing is and where the lore is headed, it's time to go Easter egg hunting for a monster.
I'd watch it.
Now,
I feel like
my first theory on the Fazbear Frights books briefly covered the Stitch Wraith, and back then I assumed he was Ennard. The Wraith was described in that book as a mysterious figure wearing a black cloak and wearing a white mask with features drawn in thick black marker. The description specifically calls out his 2 eyes, one of which appears to be blacked out, a big toothy grin with blood around the mouth, and a limping or shambling walk. White mask, blacked out eye, shamble, shake. It seems like a slam dunk for Ennard. However, the epilogue for 1:35 a.m. threw that hypothesis out the window, as it revealed just exactly how the Stitch Wraith was brought to life. A process that actually reveals a lot about how this series' mythos works. In this epilogue, we're introduced to Dr. Phineas Taggart, not to be confused.
Why did this guy actually look like David Tennant with a scraggly beard?
With his friend Dr. Ferb Fletcher. Phineas is a bit of a mad scientist.
Wait, what?
Series' mythos works. In this epilogue, we're introduced to Dr. Phineas Taggart, not to be confused with his friend Dr. Ferb Fletcher. Phineas is a bit of a mad scientist
I hate
type,
that.
studying
That's
the untapped
awful.
power of human emotion. As he says himself, quote, human emotion is slower to
No, but I thought that Scott actually made that part of the story, and I was like, oh god.
impact. More insidious. It emanates from us, or is excreted from us like sweat or tears, and it wafts outward like a noxious cloud soaking into the surroundings. In particular, his research
might
is
be
centered
fun,
around
but
the
it is
intense
not
emotion
funny.
of agony. In order to study it, we see that Phineas collects hundreds of haunted objects to search for this emotion trapped inside. Again, from the book, the word haunted can mean showing signs of torment or some kind of mental anguish. These items on Phineas's shelves weren't possessed by ghosts. The ones that were truly haunted were energized by agony. Agony, I'm convinced, radiates farther from people than any other emotion, Phineas said. My work is focused on my hypothesis that you can take a saturation of agony, add any sort of intelligence, even—
How do you take a saturation of agony? How do you take a saturation of agony? An emotion. Howard, do I just yell inside the jar? Is that what it is?
an artificial one, and they'll combine together to transmute
What the
energy
fuck
of emotion
is an
into the
artificial?
energy
Oh,
of
an
physical
artificial
action.
intelligence. My bad.
This, I believe, is what explains what people call haunted objects.
Genuinely, I believe that an energy of an emotion can cause like haunts, right? Like putting energy out there and stuff like that. I do. The idea of taking a saturation of agony, though, it's okay.
And already you might be starting to see how this all ties into what we already know about this franchise. In FNAF 6's Insanity ending, we were introduced to the blueprints outlining how the sister location Scooper worked, and it was, well, it was not what we expected, to say the least. Through those blueprints, we learned about the mystery metal called Remnant, and its ability to supposedly give life to objects that it touches. The novel The Fourth Closet took it one step further and showed us the Remnant metal being created and used. In that story, we watch as
It's
William
a
Afton
fictional
melts
world. Don't
down
look so
pieces
much
of gold
into it. I
animatronics,
mean,
creating a remnant soup.
it can't be as fictional as possible. How much more fictional do they want it to be? I mean, I get that it's fictional, okay? It's just, if it's fictional, you don't really need the ability to sit down and do theories and put puzzles together for 57, longer than 57 episodes, probably 60 episodes. You know what I'm saying? I just feel like if everything is going to be explained with, oh, well, I mean, it's just fictional. It's like, okay, we don't need story. We don't need plot. Whatever. Who cares? But if we're going to try and theorize, then some things have to make sense, right?
That he then uses to give life to new
What's
living
up, Leon
robots,
Blaine?
specifically
Hi,
the
Late Mike.
Funtime animatronics. Quote, on the heating table rested the endoskeletons of the original Freddy's animatronics, welded and melted together, immobile and featureless, and still inhabited by the spirits of the children who had been murdered inside of them so many years ago, still filled with life and motion and thought, all trapped, all in terrible pain. Usually this goes into something mechanical, something I made, Williams said. If we remember back to Candy Cadet's
Romeo
stories of 5
Soul
things
12 is now
always
boarding.
becoming
Welcome to
one
Label
thing,
Air. Hope you have a
5
safe and
things getting
enjoyable
sewn
flight.
together, or 5 keys melted down into one, this is exactly what those stories were referring to. But Phineas's experiments in 1:35 a.m. actually take it one step further and give us more insight into the true nature of Remnant. Things that are brought to life via Remnant aren't necessarily infused with a soul, but instead with agony, with intense human emotion, with extreme human suffering. This is important because it means that characters like Balloon Boy, the Bitty Babs, and the Mini Renas and Sister Location, heck, even animatronics like Mango
Balloon
don't
Boy!
necessarily need to have actual victims associated with them. We used to look at solving the mysteries of this series as having it be one-to-one all the time. Susie equals Chica, Charlie equals the puppet, Cassidy equals Golden Freddy. But what we're starting to learn is that there are other ways to bring things to life in this series, that some animatronics may contain multiple souls, like we talked about last time with Golden Freddy, and some might not contain any souls at all, as long as it always ties back to some extreme tragedy filled with this all-powerful emotion of agony.
This is definitely also Harry Potter Horcruxes. Sort of. And there's still a death that has to do with it, but...
So with that
agony!
little analysis in place, let's go back to our story. We see Phineas collect objects associated with horrific tragedies, and via some means funnel all the agony from them down into an endoskeleton, which we're specifically told is meant to be a stand-in for bones, so we're talking like a FNAF 1 or FNAF 2 era endoskeleton here. Phineas then puts the head of a large 3-foot doll on it, a doll whose description bears a shocking similarity to Blank, actually, from the fan game Five Nights at Candy's.
What? What the fuck is that? What is a fan game? Another fan made one of these?
And finally, a battery pack before turning this beast on. And not only does this modern Frankenstein come to life, it immediately kills its creator, Phineas, seemingly by accident, surprisingly, and then runs off, hiding under a black cloak. The Stitch Wraith has been born.
This is literally the son of Frankenstein.
But okay, why am
Or
I
the
making
monster
such a big deal out of this
Frankenstein.
thing?
Frankenstein's
Why
monster.
does this guy deserve his own episode? Well, because solving the Stitch Wraith story in these books is like a game unto itself. You see, there have been very subtle clues hidden throughout the 9 other stories in this series that connect things back to the Stitch Wraith.
They just didn't know the strength that they had.
My first clue was the battery pack Phineas
And now they
uses
feel
to power
bad.
the Stitch Wraith as he's building it. Because it's not just any battery pack. It came from Fetch, the murder animatronic dog from book 2 of the series.
Okay.
Quote, the item in the second box was an animatronic dog that clearly no longer functioned. The dog was an ugly dog, with a triangle-shaped head and a wide
Rude?
mouth full of sharp teeth.
Why
In
did you need to
minutes,
say
he
that?
revealed the dog's battery pack. So immediately we know that the Stitch Wraith story is happening after the events of the Fetch story from book number 2.
Why? That's so rude.
So I dug around deeper and more connections kept coming. Earlier in this same book, in the title story 1:35 a.m. about the haunted Ella doll, there's one line referencing a man named Phineas looking online for a particular toy. Quote again, one of the searches for special Ella doll led her to an online ad posted by a user named Phineas who was trying to find one of the dolls. His ad referenced the special Ella doll and said he was willing to pay a premium for the doll's energy.
Doll's haunted. That makes sense. Doll's fucking... I mean, we knew the doll was haunted, but, like, Doll's haunted makes sense as hell.
Overall, across the 9 stories published so far, 7 seem to tie back to the Stitch Wraith, allowing us to create a rough timeline of events. So bear with me as we go through this. We know that 1:35 a.m. and Fetch must come first because Phineas is alive and looking for the Ella doll like I just mentioned, and the evil robot dog has just started his murder spree. From there comes the story we just covered, Epilogue 3 and the Stitch Wraith's creation. After that, he begins to roam the city collecting body parts for some purpose. You may remember book number 1 story to be Beautiful, in which Baby hacks apart a human girl named Sarah in order to steal her identity. Sarah is rebuilt out of junk only for her to fall to pieces at the end. Well, in epilogue number 1, we hear that the Stitch Wraith was seen collecting those junk pieces of Sarah. Odd, right? And it's not the only time that it happens either. In book number 2, there's the story Out of Stock about a group of friends who steal a defective plush trap doll, one with oddly human-like eyes and teeth, only for it to go on a rampage. The boys manage to escape by luring it in front of an oncoming train where it gets shattered to pieces. And again, in epilogue number 2, we see the Stitch Wraith on the scene salvaging whatever he can find of the broken bot. And that's where it would seem to end if it weren't for one other small detail. You see, in one of the other stories in this book, Room for One More, about a security guard being force-fed mini Rena dolls in the basement of Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rentals, there's a
That's what he's trying to do,
a restaurant
obviously.
called the Snack Space. Hey man, I was picking up a takeout order at Luigi's the other night and saw your ex on a date with the manager of the Snack Space. Seems super unimportant, right? Well, it would be if this was the only time that it was mentioned, but it's popped up in one of the other stories. In Into the Pit, the very first story, the one about the time-traveling ball pit, the Snack Space is where the protagonist's father works, which means that Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rentals' sister location is also in that world, which in turn connects it to one final story, Count the Ways, where we see an old, broken Funtime.
Can somebody send me a visual map? Because at this point, I'm fucking confused. I mean, like, I get it, but at the same time, I'm fucking confused, okay?
Freddy planning to execute a girl trapped inside of his stomach. And while these aren't necessarily directly tied to the Stitch Wraith, it certainly feels like at some point all of these stories will come together, as though we're working on chunks of a larger puzzle. We've got a big chunk over here, that's the Stitch Wraith connections, and a big chunk over here that's all connected through Sister Location and the Snack Space, and then you have a few other random pieces over here, and by the end I expect all of them will come together. So assuming that they are all connected, the time
That's your first issue, Matt. You expected all of them to come together. No way. No fucking way. Unavailable foes now boarding. Welcome to Label Air. Hope you have a safe and enjoyable flight.
timeline seems to go about like this. Lonely Freddy, the story about the kids getting mind swapped with mini Freddy dolls, has to be first because it's the only one of these stories so far where Fazbear locations are open and ready for business.
Right. A lot of the other ones, it was like in
leading to Room for One More about the underground facility filled with mini Renas hoping to escape, which would parallel what we hear in Sister Location.
Due to the massive success and even more so the unfortunate closing of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, it was clear that the stage was set, no pun intended, for another contender in children's entertainment.
At some point, Baby and the mini Renas escape from that underground facility, leading to 1:35 a.m. with Phineas looking for the haunted doll and Greg activating the murder dog in an abandoned Freddy Fazbear's in Fetch. From there, the next major moment is Stitch Wraith's creation in Epilogue 3, which then leads to his quest for body parts in To Be Beautiful Epilogue 1 and Out of Stock Epilogue 2. We also know that Into the Pit and The New Kid happen near the end of the timeline since they both feature a closed down, forgotten, or repurposed Freddy's building. Also, there's Count the Ways, which is towards the end of this timeline grouped with these other stories since a retired Funtime Freddy is just randomly sitting in a garage killing kids. What does all of this...
I feel like Into the Pit is even further than Count the Ways just because Into the Pit is not just an abandoned Freddy's. It was already like incredibly repurposed.
Tell us, what was the purpose of doing all this work? Well, first, all of this seems to connect us pretty solidly into the book trilogy. The fact that we have an Ella doll infused with agony that Phineas wants his hands on perfectly matches the Ella doll that Henry made for his daughter Charlie. To quote from the fourth closet, agony erupted, flooding the room with its sound. A man lay curled on the floor, something cradled tightly in his arms, and when his mouth opened, the room shook with the sound of his anguish. Who is that? Charlie said anxiously. What is he holding? You don't recognize her? Elizabeth said. That's Ella, of course. It's all your father had left after you were taken. He cried over that cheap store-bought rag.
Wait, where is it? What is this one in?
to connect us pretty solidly into the book trilogy. The fact
Oh,
that
the
we have an
bu-
Ella
from the
doll
book
infused with
trilogy.
agony that Phineas wants his hands on perfectly matches.
I see.
Smith said.
Okay.
That's Ella, of course. It's all your father had left after you were taken. He cried over that cheap store-bought rag doll for 2 months, cried into it, bled into it, poured his grief over it, end quote. At which point, he makes the robotic Ella doll that we talked about in the last episode. So what we're seeing in these stories appears to be, at least to some extent, the aftermath of that trilogy of books. Which also means that we might already know the true identity of the Stitch Wraith. It's a bit of a long shot, but it's my personal headcanon until proven otherwise. I think that the endoskeleton that powers the Stitch Wraith, the main body that's become the conduit for all of this agony, is the same endoskeleton that killed Henry. The robot that he used to end his own life. The stabbing robot, which, let's be honest, is like the most complicated way to do that sort of thing. Like, build a robot to stab you to death? What? Creative types, man, they are weird. Anyway, we're told in the Silver Eyes that it's a basic Gen 1 endoskeleton with an unfinished face, which would explain exactly why Phineas needs to put a head on it. Quote from the Silver Eyes, she could see its face, if it could be called a face. Its features were scarcely formed, crude and shapeless. Its blind eyes were only raised bumps like the eyes of a statue, seeing nothing but its own grief. We also know that this endoskeleton would be absolutely filled to the brim with agony. I mean, as far as endoskeletons go, a murder bot built by a grieving father is a pretty huge deal. And it's apparently an important enough character to this franchise to have also appeared at the end of the book trilogy. When Charlie is being attacked by Baby, it's this
No! I'm terrified of that fucking noise, goddammit!
murder bot and its trusty knife that Charlie uses to do them both in. I have a very, very strong theorist instinct that the Stitch Wraith will, at some point during this book series, be revealed to be connected back to Henry and his bizarre death. Just saying, the pieces are in place for us.
It's not completely impossible.
Assuming that the Fazbear Fright series
This,
is
if
connected
this
a
is
bit
all
closer to
just
book
book
trilogy,
related,
like it appears to be, we know that Book 5, Bunny Call, features a story about a man with gruesome burns over his body and an iron will to live. I mean, we already suspected that that was William Afton, but going back to see how his story ended in the fourth closet, we see that his death is far from certain.
Thank you for
In his
fixing your
final
posture.
moments,
I appreciate
his hospital
it.
gown catches fire and he's pulled into a massive furnace. But then nothing. No official confirmation that that burning actually kills him. Therefore, a burned man in a hospital who refuses to die sounds like a certain yellow bunny we all know who always comes back. And with that, I've had enough FNAF for now. Oh man, it has been a lot. The new book
I've had enough FNAF for now. Literally, we'll release one probably in like 4 weeks.
comes out in early July, so
Maybe 3 weeks from that time.
at the very least, I get a break for a couple of weeks. Thank goodness. No.
Ow! What the hell is that?
Man, I am a little on edge these days. 2020 has really started to mess with my head. I need to relax. But I've seen all of this, literally everything on every streaming platform. If only there was something new to watch. Wait, can it be? Our sponsor for today's episode.
Okay, alrighty. Wow, that's okay. Alrighty. Vanessa? Oh, it's supposed to be, it was a teaser for Security Breach. I see. Okay, well, that is where we're at right now. It says, FNAF, your pain fuels us, almost literally. Not me, though, just literally to, apparently, the possible others, remnant, anguish, agony, whatever, dude. I have no idea. At this point, I'm like, okay, this is a whole other AU for me, so I'm not really as interested for sure. I'm waiting for it to get back to the game because I feel like I know that these all like are part of it, but I feel like it's important. If it was like genuinely important, part of it would, I don't know. You know, it's gonna get retconned anyway, so fuck it. Alrighty, okay, so right now I'm gonna take a quick break, get up, stretch, get some water. I'm gonna go in to sit in with our collab. Perfect timing, actually. We're gonna have a collab upcoming soon. Grab your snacks, have some fun. We're doing some Jackbox actually with Phoenix, where we're doing. I'm in the middle of my funathon day 15, and he's doing a subathon as well. But It's Footathon day 15 for me right now. All the rules are in the middle bottom. Okay, we're gonna get. It's good to have whole context. I guess it's true, but these are all theories, so it's like it's not even I get actual whole context. Yeah, so we're doing some Jackbox games with a couple of new friends and Phoenix. Hold on. There we go. But I'll be right back before that, okay? Be right back.